Hey guys, this is miicrow. I wanted to kind of do a quick video because the Night Vale Hollow event is ending tomorrow, November 5th, which is going to be a hectic day for all sorts of reasons. But when this event ends, this is a time for AGS to push out patches. And historically, when an event ends, is a very common time that AGS uses for bug fixes. At this point, I believe that New World has been out for like 3 or 4 weeks. I think this is going into its fourth week. So this is a pretty good amount of time for devs to kind of work on bugs and fix exploits. And I expect to see bugs and exploit fixes, especially if AGS is trying to kind of rebrand themselves, if you will, into being a game that's a little bit more pro console player, more pro like kind of new players in general, and like actually looking to like kind of receive community feedback. It feels like a lot of bug reports have been made, but maybe more like not really acknowledged as much as uh, in the past. Like if I go through the Discord, I mean, there's information on like how to report bugs and whatnot, but like there are so many bug reports, and like one of the main issues I think that AGS has in general is that if a bug has been reported, it's and you get a repeat of the bug, then you're just like kind of wasting time. Like you're tracking the same issues. So you have to have people that like comb through this giant list of reports, which I imagine is just like way longer now, especially because there's more players playing the game. I imagine AGS didn't get like a huge surge in the amount of resources that they have, so it just inherently makes it more difficult to track and kind of keep up with bugs. Historically, in times like this, I tended to put out a bug sheet that allowed like community members to report bugs maybe a little bit more clearly, because even though there's all these bugs in this bug forum, it's missing a very large percentage of the player base because a good amount of PvP players are somewhat toxic and they got banned from this server, so they don't have access to a lot of these bugs. And then there's also the other half of the PvP community that maybe isn't trying to necessarily report bugs, but just abuse them to gain an advantage. And in order to kind of prevent those people from getting an advantage, those bugs need to be public facing so that they actually get attention to be fixed. Or at least they have to be public facing enough to where the playing field is somewhat evened so that there's no inherent advantage. The main issue I have with this right now, with the current state of the game, is that there is a very distinct advantage given to PC players over console players due to AGS's inability to prevent macro usage in PvP environments. This allows certain bugs to be a lot more replicable and gives people a very big advantage. People are doing things that I don't think AGS really thought of before. Like it's a very common technique now within the war scene to bind certain keybinds to macros to target locks, because without target lock feels better in a lot of spots, but then people will use the target lock for certain abilities. So like Firestaff's Pillar of Fire, for example, really hard ability to aim. With target lock, very easy. People don't like the target lock, so they have a macro to do that. And while I have no issue like with that itself, console players don't have the ability to really have macros because that's all like controller based, right? And there's no easy way to do that. I don't think there's a great way from AGS to solve that in terms of making macros on console viable. I think it's a lot easier to solve to actually just enforce the fact that macros shouldn't really be allowed in PC, at least in areas where PvP is involved. And I think that's something that I haven't really seen been enforced at all. The other thing I wanted to go through today was kind of a soft tracker of the exploits that I am aware of. I think there's a lot more than this. I've been trying to kind of take a back seat for once and not be the guy that's tracking all the exploits, tracking all the bugs, because quite frankly, it kind of gets depressing. And I really don't want that right now, especially after daylight savings and now everything's just dark outside and it's already kind of a little bit gloomy in a way. So I'm trying to keep like kind of negative videos like this down to once per week. But here is a list of the most common bugs that I know about, or exploits that a lot of PvP players have complained about, and I kind of want to go through these and just explain them. So there is a BB extra ammo exploit involving mortar, where you can use a shot, use the mortar animation, cancel the mortar animation, and then go back and use another shot, and for some reason you get an ammo back. People are using this to consistently deal more damage with BB. The weird thing with this is that you have to cancel the target lock for this to actually work. So because if you cancel out mortar, you have to do it with escape. So people just bind that to a macro and then they do that. You don't have to do it with a macro, but that's like one that macro really heavily enables. There's a BB. I don't know how you do this one, but some people have figured out a way to use abilities right next to when they auto attack with blunderbuss, and then this allows them to shoot off an extra shot. Like they could double shoot, basically, is what people are calling it. And this, of course, is not very fair. People are able to do this with the target lock enabled, so you're not missing. You're shooting twice as much as you should, and it's just deleting people. Very, very bad. I think off these two exploits alone, like if this was like the OG AGS with David at the lead, then this would honestly probably be a temporary banned weapon until this was addressed and fixed. I don't really think AGS is at that point now where they want to be banning weapons, especially because of the new surge in population. But if that's the case where they aren't looking to ban the weapons, and this is something that's like should be high priority and should be tracked down. But as I mentioned before, a lot of the PvP players are banned from that Discord. They just end up DMing me all these exploits and bugs, and I have somewhat of an avenue to convey them to AGS, but it's like not official or anything like that. And I also, it's not like a responsibility I really want, but like I also want the game to be playable to some extent. So it's like I'm kind of taking it, even though I don't love doing it, and I kind of wish there was someone else that could do that as well. But here we are. There's another one that I think a lot of people know about at this point. I think I made a video about this because I thought, because someone else made a video about this one, where bows can use heavy attacks faster than light attacks now. This is like the same heavy attack exploit that's existed in the past, except it's like, I'd say 1.5 times faster than the ones that have been used in the past. Really, really unfair. And this is also a thing that could warrant bow being temporarily disabled. There's another one that would warrant a weapon getting temporarily disabled where the life staff machine gun exploit is back. I think I actually have a clip of this one that I can look for, but it's kind of funny. Oh no, never mind. The person that DM'd me the clip deleted it because they don't want it tracked back to them because they don't want to get banned. Okay, I don't have that one anymore, but it's the same mechanic that used to work for the old life staff exploit. You use a shot, you queue a sacred, you cancel the sacred, shoot a shot. You could do that really, really fast. And obviously not super fair at all. It shoots as fast as it used to. It's just the old exploit that came back. There is a Vine's attack speed exploit that I have yet to figure out how to replicate, where you could use Vines, and then for some reason after all your attacks are basically doing going off twice as fast. This same exploit also works with cannon. I don't know how you do this one, but they are both pretty damning. You see people in the FFA island very often doing this exploit, is like what I would put it as. Like I think this exploit was found within the first 2 days of New World coming out, and I just saw people in the FFA island doing it, and I was so confused what was going on. And then like recently I've kind of figured out that they were doing this. Once again, people not reporting exploits. You can't really blame the devs like of fixing issues that they don't know about, but I feel like the trust is so eroded between the devs and the community that like people don't, like in terms of the old community, I don't know about the new community yet, that people are like don't really care about reporting exploits at this point because they assume they're just going to be part of the game because they don't really get fixed even if they're reported for a very long time. Like it was not uncommon for things as of recently, like I believe before this event went live, like in terms of the new console event, that in that same patch notes they put out that they fixed or they finally gave people their gold back from the first light houses being deleted like over a year ago. It's just like shit like that just like irritates people like really, really often. This is another one of those exploits that like, honestly, all these things in the top half here like warrant the things that involve them being disabled until they actually work. They're all really, really, really bad. There's I don't really know if I'd call this an exploit. It's more of a bug, but Heartroom can double cast if you're CC'd in the middle of it. Games like Overwatch, the way that they typically handle this case is if you get CC'd out of an ability, you lose that ability. So if I'm going to try to use an ability, I get CC'd out of it, you lose it. That's how it works in New World for abilities, but for some reason for Heartrooms, it doesn't work that way. I think it should also work for Heartrooms that way. That would just make that situation a lot easier. Pots aren't being consumed when used. This is kind of an old bug that still exists where it's particularly frustrating whenever you have a really important pot that you need to pop, like a health pot, and you press the button, you look down, you realize it wasn't ever used, but you're not like in any animation, no one's hitting you, no one's tagging you out of the effect for some reason, and it's like, I think it's a kind of a hard one to run down, but still really, really frustrating when it happens. There's an SNS Stam Rune Glass bug where you use I believe it's an energizing Carnelian, you use Shield Rush or you use Shield Bash, and then the extra Stam that you get from the SNS passive still works on every single one of the ticks of the Rune Glass. That was fixed, it came back. There's an FFA area kill trade exploit that a lot of companies are using to get very, very head into PvP track. I've heard people on the Fresh Start servers already at 200 because they use this bug. Not really wonderful. There's, of course, the FFA area teaming. I think at this point, everyone's kind of given up on the FFA area, if I'm going to be honest. It's kind of been deemed a soft failure, but the rewards aren't good enough to really justify going in there super frequently. So it's like, I feel like AGS kind of dodged a bullet in the FFA because it's just not beneficial enough to go there. It's still kind of nice to go there to gather resources, but honestly, the doubloons are like not that useful of a currency. The artifacts there aren't super great. I think one thing I heard from people that I agree will make this a lot better is that they tied the PvP reward track artifacts to also being able to drop from the doubloons vendor and like pay the 6,000 doubloons and then you can get your Serenity. Like that would instantly make the area way more popular overnight. Wouldn't it be a huge change by AGS and then would heavily incentivize PvP? That being said, once that's rolled out, you're gonna have to address teaming again. So it's like there's a give and take there. There's a new bug in 3v3 where you can kind of jump out of the map. This is on the new 3v3 map, and due to the new jump height, it's kind of funny. I don't think it's as important to fix, but it's still like kind of silly because you can get in an unintended spot and then shoot people with a ranged weapon and just win. In War, you can jump on the ceiling at the towers. It's a bug. That's kind of minor. Elemental Band is currently working off of dots. It's currently working off of attunements. It's currently working off of Thorny Reflection. All of those, for pretty obvious reasons, are kind of broken. This is something that's kind of been bugged with other abilities in the past too. So if I go to Shirking Empower, for example, this is coded as giving you 7% damage, or a 7% empower increase every time you dodge for 10 seconds. If you dodge again, it adds 10 seconds. It doesn't refresh the duration to 10 seconds, so you can get like above where you're supposed to. The same thing happens with this Elemental Band effect, where you can get like 20 something seconds of like 20 to 30% in power, which for obvious reasons isn't super fair. It makes Elemental Band basically a must-have. If you're not able to complete the raid, you can't compete with people that have it, and then I think overall it's like a little bit not fair, but it's also a really cool artifact with the way it's bugged right now, because a lot of people are changing their builds to actually make it work with that artifact. Like I feel like it's almost nice the way it works right now, but I would just like lessen the effect and just keep it the way it is. I think it like almost works better this way. Like if there was a way to not make it, you know, last infinite duration, and maybe it was nerfed from like 4% to like 2% or 3%, then I think it would be like a relatively balanced artifact and people would still use it a lot. And so it would enable a lot of cool builds, but as it stands right now, it's kind of overpowered. But that's kind of it for this kind of video. It's very high level. Just some exploits that I've noticed. I feel like AGS in general has handled the launch actually pretty well. Like I feel like them being quiet's almost better than them talking, which I think is what they realized too and why they stopped putting out the YouTube videos. That being said, it is like one of those things where AGS prides themselves on terms of communication. I know that why they're not communicating right now, but in terms of like, or at least I think they do, but in terms of community generally not like it when they were communicating recently, especially with regards to like the aimbot that they added into the game, aka target lock. Like people really, really don't like that still, and it's pretty clear at this point AGS is going to stick with that decision and live with the consequences, so it is what it is. It's just I wish AGS would address issues a lot more, and honestly, like 90% of these exploits that I'm like complaining about right now would literally just be fixed overnight if they figured out a way to detect macros and then ban people that use macros in PvP areas. And I feel like that should just be that simple. And then the only other spot where I really see macros being used is like to open chest as an auto clicker, and because AGS doesn't have an open all button yet, and if they made that, then I feel like that would just fix like every issue that really required a macro. There's not really a ton of other issues that require it. Like maybe I'm being naive there, but man, like these bugs are mostly bad because you could just replicate them consistently. If it's something that at least requires like heavy degree of like input skill, like it's like a fighting game or something like that. At least it's like somewhat balanced off of that. But as it stands right now, it's pretty painful to work around all of these, especially if you're like a console player and then a PC player is like consistently doing something you can't do because they have a macro. Like I feel like that's just a pretty shitty experience. But let me know what you guys think. Sorry for the kind of sour video. I'm trying to avoid doing a lot of these and focus on stuff for newer players and kind of returning players and kind of leveling up to the end game area of the game. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.